Hello there, you're watching WilhelMiniatures. The deadline of the Terminator 28 mutant contest is tomorrow, so I better get to work. In the contest, we're supposed to make a mutant based on this mutation table, which is a randomizer from 1 to 50, and I'm going to use dice. So in my head, it makes sense that I roll 2, 1 for the first number, 1 for the second, and it will become between 1 to 50 if 6s are 0. So let's go for the first one. That's 53. Of course, the first one doesn't exist because it's between 1 and 50. So let's try again. 0, 6s are 0, and 5. So the first one is 5. And the fifth mutation is the cavernous maw. With just one bite of this smiling root vegetable, the snob's torso split open. Awful tears run down the snob's body, dividing into giant mouths bristling with peg-like teeth. 0 again, and 4. Regeneration. An almost everyday meal for the most violent campaigners. This root helps regrowth lost limbs and patch up severed kneecaps. So here I can choose either to remove injuries, which I guess doesn't really do anything with the miniature, or we can sprout new limbs, which sounds a lot more interesting. Alright, so that's a d6 amount of limbs. 2. So we're going to have 2 additional limbs. And the final mutation is 44. Either mounted astride or pulled behind, your snob loves their new root steed. And here we're going to roll a d3 to decide which steed we're going to get. 3, that's 2 on a d3. So we got the pantomime charger. 2 chaps and a skull does not make a horse. In short, we're going to have a big mouth, and we're going to have 2 extra limbs, and we're finally going to have a steed, which consists of 2 humans, and the skull, which was the description. So let's see if we can make something from this. As the steed is going to be made up of humans, I think I want to use these crawling knights that I designed a little while ago. They are available on my Patreon, so if you want to print some, then check it out. Follow the link in the description. They're also going to have a skull, so I have these horse skulls that I can use. For a mouth, I found this one. I think the mouth is like going to go through the entire body or like the entire torso, but yeah, this one is at least a big mouth, so if I can't find anything better, then this is kind of good. For extra limbs and such, I think this is going to be a good starting point, so I'm going to keep that one close. And also the Forsaken box. These are not nice miniatures, but they have a lot of nice bits, so especially for the extra limbs, I might find something here. As it's going to be 2 humans making up the steed, I kind of want them to be sticking together. So I'm going to use a knight and this little thing from the Forsaken kit. There we have 2 people and a skull. Ish. I found this head in the Forsaken box, and it's not a nice looking face, but the back of the head is a quite nice looking face. That's not the face, but it looks a little bit like a turnip, so I'm going to use that. And I've decided to go with this mouth after all, and I have this zombie torso that I'm going to place on top of it so that the mouth is on the stomach and that it doesn't have a mouth on its actual face. And as none of these pieces are meant to go together, I'm using thick super glue to glue everything, because it builds up a little bit of volume and it's easy to fill the gaps that I get when gluing random stuff together. Right, it's going to have 6 limbs because I got 2 extra ones, and I've glued down an extra arm so far. But I think I want 3 other ones to be legs. But before attaching the legs, I need to figure out how to mount it on the steed. It looks really weird like this, so it needs to be much more integrated. Of course, this will help when it's got the legs, but I don't know which direction or what to do with it. And I did find this nice looking snail shell on my desk, and it fits so well in there, so it would actually be a shame not to use it. This is of course not part of the mutations I got, but maybe I could use the shell as some kind of saddle for the mount. Okay, this is not working out. It's too tall and there's no way to connect them nicely. So what I think I will have to do is to make this into a chariot situation, to have it pulled by the crawling knight. And that, as the description said, that it was supposed to be made out of 2 humans. I was kind of counting this one as the second, but if I make a chariot, I can actually have another knight beside it and have the chariot in the back. So I'm going to try to do that. The long limb here was made out of 2 parts, so I can use this one as a neck for this second nightcrawler. I also need to attach a hat in some way to show that this is a fancy person with a fancy hat, but I don't want to cut something of this nice lumpy head. So I think I'm going to attach it to one of the steeds. And this one actually has a little head. So maybe I can give this one the hat. Yes. The corpse cart is definitely one of the best kits by Games Workshop, as it's got so many weird little details, like these piles of bodies. And also these piles of bodies are perfect for me actually, because they have feet that's not attached to the ground. And yeah, I was going to have 3 of them, so let's just grab 3 legs. What I was actually looking for was the wheels, but this one actually just had 1 wheel left. The only bit I had taken from this previously was the other wheel, so I guess I have a kit bash somewhere with 1 wheel on it. So yeah, I guess this one will have the second, and I will have to find something else to cover the other side. Anyway, now it's time to put these together and make it into a chariot. And what I found was this piece from a terrain, 40k terrain piece, I think. And it looks a bit like some plow that I can use to dig up all of these nice turnips or root vegetables from the ground. So this one will also give it some height. So I was thinking about maybe attaching them like this somehow, so that the plow is between the night crawlers. I don't know, or maybe I should go with the wheels, or both, wheels and the plow. That would also give the height. I'm not sure how to attach them to each other, but maybe I should try some chains. It's been a long while since I used this, and I think the thickness is good. I have a thinner one, but I actually think this quite heavy one would look good. I'm wrapping some thin wire around the steeds to make an attachment point for the chain. I think the kit bashing portion is finished on this one. I still need to add a few details here and there, and of course do the texture and paint it. But I think it's quite good so far, and it's a fun interpretation of the challenge. I'm applying some liquid green stuff and crackle paint, Martian Iron Earth, to especially the 3D printed parts, but basically a little bit all over. And I'm doing this before applying the last couple of details, because this will help me to see where anything is missing. So if there's gaps to be filled, it's going to be easier to see when yeah, when I have this texture layer down, or not necessarily easier to see, but I might fill some of the areas that I want to green stuff, and then I don't have to anymore. I'm applying a layer of watered down Mod Podge to the chains because I don't want them to move around too much. It looks like this is also going to fill all the loops, but I think that's going to be fine when I start painting. I might as well do the base now that I'm texturing the miniature, so I'm just going to slap on a layer of a mix of PVA glue or Mod Podge and garden dirt. Turnip 28 is a very muddy setting, so I decided to add some texture to the characters as well. Maybe I can try to use this instead of green stuff to blend the pieces together. I primed this one last night, and today is the 15th, the day the challenge ends, so I will have to paint it quite quickly. But I'm very happy with how it is so far. It's always nice to look at the miniature after priming, when everything comes together and has the same tones. I'm starting out by base coating all the metal parts with a dark brown, and while I have this color on the brush, I'm going to do the base as well. And I also think it's good to stipple the underside of everything with brown and try to get this into the hard to reach areas. This is so that if I don't reach these areas later or forget about them, they will be a dark shadow color. With the brown done, I'm applying some Rakarth flesh to the flesh and bone areas, and I'm doing this before the brown has properly dried, but it doesn't matter that much if I get any brown mixed in, it will just add to the variation, so that's actually a good thing. Here I'm just applying some sand color on the undersides of the flesh and in the recesses, because I think the Rakarth flesh was a little bit too light as a first layer. Now we're over to the metal parts, and I'm stippling the surface of the armor with lead belcher. I'm stippling and not dry brushing this color onto the armor because these pieces are 3D printed, and I don't want to enhance the 3D print lines. I'm going right over to Runefang Steel, doing the same, but this time focusing on the tops where the light would hit. I found this snail shell in the water at some point, and I didn't realize before priming it that it's very worn, and the snail shell pattern is almost washed out, so I'm going to try to freehand the snail pattern on there, or like get some more interest than just this lump. First I just want to figure out where the spiral is supposed to be. While having the watered down white on my brush already, I went over all the skin and bone areas and added the dirty highlight to everything. Now it's time to apply some washes. I'm going to apply several at the same time, focusing the red and purple ones on the fleshy areas, and black, green and sepia on the metals. I'm also going to use a little bit of sepia as a transition between the two. The washes haven't completely dried, but they are more or less dry on the tops, which is where I will place the highlights anyway, so I'm just going to start. Again, I'm just using some very watered down pure white to add some spots and textures here and there. I've covered most of the skin areas with a white highlight, and now I'm going over the armor with some silver. I'm probably going to do the highlights in several steps, going a bit back and forth, giving it a layer where I feel it's needed. But in general, for the armor, I'm just going to apply a sharp edge highlight. I'm going to stipple it a little bit to add some texture and nice variations. Using some watered down orange brown to add a little bit of rust here and there. With the rust and highlights and a couple of details in place, this one is starting to look finished. Of course, I have the base left to do, and I haven't really decided what to do yet. Because the last miniature I painted was this one, and they fit quite well together. Of course, the knights are similar because they're both based on the same design, even though this one's a little bit more yellow. I think this base color would work quite well on this one. However, this is the base color I've gone with for my other turnip miniatures, and so far that's just the snail. and the troll, so two big ones. And I went with like a dark brown on both of them because they both have very pale skin, so it works. But for this one, I mean, it wouldn't look that different from how it is right now, and it works, but I think I want the base to pop a little bit more. And lastly, I have these little mutants. And I have a bunch of these that I painted several years ago, and I just realized that they fit very, very well together. I mean, the painting is a little bit updated on this one with more contrast and more highlight, because my style is a little bit different now than it was some years ago. But of course, I have been planning to go back to these and bump up the contrasts a little bit. Anyway, these ones have more of a green base, more of the direction that I've gone on my dark mechanical miniatures too. So that would be an option too. So it's either orange, green or brown. It's difficult to decide. But I actually think I'm going for this one. And then we'll see. Of course, bases are easy to repaint, so let's just go for it and see how it turns out. These are the same paints that I used on the rust. So it's Scrag Brown, this orange brown one, and a little bit of Fire Slayer orange. I'm lightly dabbing on the lighter orange color, not dry brushing it, because I want it to be applied quite thick in some places and nowhere in others. I think using the same color on the base that I've already used on the miniature itself works quite well, because if I end up hitting the miniature, it can just be a spot of rust or dust from the ground. If I were to introduce green or something, it might look a little bit weird. I'm using a little bit of sepia orange and green shades on the base, just to have a little bit more variation and to bring out the shadows a little bit more. I want the tufts to stand out a little bit more, so I'm going to try to make them as flowers. And here I'm just dabbing the tips with some thick white paint. I'm really looking forward to see what everyone else is making for the competition. It was super fun to roll on the random mutant table, so if you want a challenge for yourself, you should try to make a turnip leader. If you're creatively stuck, using a randomizer table is perfect to decide what to do on your next project. And lastly, just a reminder for my Patreon, where you can find STL files of several of my 3D sculptures. I will see you all in the next episode. Goodbye.